Hello, you guys. Good evening. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Let's Talk on Tuesday. We are now on episode 3, which I'm really excited about because, consistency is key. Just a quick disclosure, I am at a public location. The reason being is just pretty much where I ended up at this time. But also the intention was to capture that rawness, which is why initially the podcast was supposed to be hosted live, but I'm just not there yet. So eventually I will get there. In the meantime, I do ask that you guys, continue to be patient, still continue to support as we progress and grow together. I will always be grateful for any support that I receive. And hopefully you guys are still learning something of value that you can use or improve yourself in life, if that makes sense. So with that being said, I want to just get right into it. Now, when the title had first came to me a few days ago, I thought I knew exactly where I wanted to go with this episode. But now I'm not sure anymore. And you know what? That's okay. Sometimes the best conversations begin when you're willing to admit that your own thinking is changing. And the older I get, the more it seems like I'm less interested in having a quick opinion. I know now that I'm becoming much more interested in understanding why something exists in the first place. If you know me, or if you haven't noticed by now, I am the type of person that always wants to know the why or the how behind life. What produces the patterns that we experience over and over again? What's the cause and effects of life that goes unnoticed by the untrained mind? What different systems are being expressed or recycled? I don't know exactly what those systems are just yet. Maybe it's something that we can think through together because I know I'm not the only one on this wave. But again, how did we get here? I don't know that either. I'm simply noticing the patterns. Now, in the last episode, I talked about what has value, and every generation answers that question differently. But I wonder if we're asking the question in the wrong order. Maybe the better question is, what creates value in the first place? That's a much harder question, because if you can answer that, you stop chasing money. You start understanding why money moves. I think energy moves first. Yes, we are all aware that energy is required to keep an economy functioning. It's also required to persuade millions of people. I mean, it takes energy just to hold a conversation like this one. Now, money often follows where that energy has already gone, which is why I decided to title this episode The Cost of Energy. Now, here's why.
Did you see what happened in the markets today? No, but I heard something big is happening. It's not just the economy. Everything feels like it's changing. Wait, isn't that what they talk about on Tuesdays? Yeah, let's talk. On Tuesday.
Alright, you guys, so this last week we've been still following the death of Mr. Nolan Wells, unfortunately. Now, the story has actually sparked a separate deep observation for me, so expect a separate post for me in regard to his situation. Now, of course, it's still in the process of an investigation, so a lot of unanswered questions. His family is still asking for transparency, and there were also 2 tragic ICE shootings, which still has unanswered questions as to why, the procedure, questions about accountability, and then there was the sudden death of Mr. Senator Lindsey Graham. Now, his death prompted for an immediate response from colleagues on both sides of the aisle, while news organizations shifted coverage towards examining both his political legacy and the broader implications for Congress moving forward. Now, all of these stories have something in common, and that's death. And long before television or before social media, death has always attracted attention. Historically, societies have always been drawn towards stories involving sudden death. public tragedy, and unanswered questions. It's one of the few experiences every human being shares. Maybe that's why we can't look away. Now, death forces us to ask questions that everyday life allows us to ignore. What happened? Could it have been prevented? Who was responsible? What happens next? Now, something else occurred to me this week. Whenever a high-profile death enters the public conversation, something much larger begins moving around it. The story almost develops its own ecosystem. The person becomes the center, but the attention spreads far beyond them. I was never convinced that we were only watching an investigation. It's more like we're watching society process uncertainty in real time. Maybe that's why these stories become so difficult to look away from. Now, almost as quickly as those conversations were rooted, the national conversation shifted again. Now, this time it shifted to a teleprompter scandal. We're constantly trying to determine what is real and who deserves our confidence. That's what finally made this week make sense to me. Maybe our biggest shortage isn't information. Maybe the shortage is confidence. From there, I started wondering, if confidence has become this valuable, can it be measured? And that's exactly where I was led into something unexpected. Now, Gabriel Perez, who was Donald Trump's teleprompter operator since 2016, is currently in a federal investigation. It's alleged that Perez used his access to the president's prepared remarks to place bets on Kalshi. Now, for those of you who do not know, Kalshi is a platform where participants bet on whether specific words or phrases would appear in presidential speeches. Authorities allege that by seeing prepared remarks before they were delivered publicly, Perez may have had access to non-public information that could provide an unfair advantage to the other participants. Now, regardless of how the investigation ultimately concludes, the case raises questions that extend far beyond one employee. Financial markets have long prohibited trading on non-public information. The allegations in this case suggest that similar questions may now be emerging in prediction markets. Whether the value of a contract can depend not on a company's earnings or a commodity's price, but on future events, public statements, or even individual words spoken during a speech. So now, after reading this, my attention is now on the prediction markets.
What if the next opportunity isn't something you buy? What if it's something you understand before everyone else? Technology is changing nearly every industry, including how communities connect, businesses engage, and digital ecosystems create value. Tripto is building a utility-driven platform designed around participation rewards and real-world engagement. Curious? Click the link in this episode description and decide for yourself.
Now, death forces us to ask questions that everyday life allows us to ignore. What happened? Could it have been prevented? Who was responsible? What happens next? Now, something else occurred to me this week. Whenever a high-profile death enters the public conversation, something much larger begins moving around it. The story almost develops its own ecosystem. The person becomes the center, but the attention spreads far beyond them. I was never convinced that we were only watching an investigation. It's more like we're watching society process uncertainty in real time. Maybe that's why these stories become so difficult to look away from. Now, almost as quickly as those conversations were rooted, the national conversation shifted again. Now, this time it shifted to a teleprompter scandal. We're constantly trying to determine what is real and who deserves our confidence. That's what finally made this week make sense to me. Maybe our biggest shortage isn't information. Maybe the shortage is confidence. From there, I started wondering, if confidence has become this valuable, can it be measured? And that's exactly where I was led into something unexpected. Now, Gabriel Perez, who was Donald Trump's teleprompter operator since 2016, is currently in a federal investigation. It's alleged that Perez used his access to the president's prepared remarks to place bets on Kalshi. Now, for those of you who do not know, Kalshi is a platform where participants bet on whether specific words or phrases would appear in presidential speeches. Authorities allege that by seeing prepared remarks before they were delivered publicly, Perez may have had access to non-public information that could provide an unfair advantage to the other participants. Now, regardless of how the investigation ultimately concludes, the case raises questions that extend far beyond one employee. Financial markets have long prohibited trading on non-public information. The allegations in this case suggest that similar questions may now be emerging in prediction markets. Whether the value of a contract can depend not on a company's earnings or a commodity's price, but on future events, public statements, or even individual words spoken during a speech. So now, after reading this, my attention is now on the prediction markets. Now, most people hear that phrase and assume it's another form of gambling. At least that was my first thought. I think prediction markets are usually trying to answer a much older question. How do you combine millions of different opinions into something useful? That is what intrigued me. Prediction markets aren't claiming certainty. They're measuring expectations. There's a subtle difference between asking what will happen and asking what do millions of people believe is likely to happen. Those are two completely different questions. Every day, billions of people exchange information. That creates a pattern. Governments already spend enormous resources trying to identify those patterns. Why? Because they're trying to reduce uncertainty. That's an important distinction. Knowing exactly what will happen is impossible. Knowing what's becoming more likely is incredibly valuable. It's one of the reasons data has become such a strategic asset. That brings us to inflation. We usually experience inflation at the grocery store or the gas station. By the time we notice it, it's already happened. Markets don't work that way. Markets spend most of their time trying to anticipate inflation before it appears on official reports. That's why expectations matter. If businesses believe costs are going higher, they often adjust prices before those costs fully arrive. If consumers believe prices are going higher, they change their spending. If investors believe interest rates will stay elevated, capital begins moving long before the central bank makes another announcement. Again, money is reacting to expectations, and expectations are driven by information. You could argue that information has become its own form of economic energy because it changes how people behave. That thought also changes how I look at war. Now, this week, the conflict with Iran entered another dangerous phase. After months of military exchanges, retaliatory strikes, and repeated diplomatic efforts through regional mediators, the fighting continues with no durable ceasefire in place. Qatar, Oman, Egypt, and Pakistan have all been involved in various points in trying to broker negotiations. Yet each round has ultimately broken down under the weight of unresolved demands and renewed attacks. Meanwhile, the military campaign has expanded beyond the battlefield. Commercial shipping through the Strait of Hormuz remains under pressure. Energy markets continue reacting to the possibility of future disruptions, and businesses around the world are once again factoring geopolitical risks into investment decisions. All respond to uncertainty. The Trump administration has maintained that military pressure is intended to force Iran back into the negotiating table while protecting U.S. personnel and restoring freedom of navigation. At the same time, a number of military and foreign policy analysts have questioned what the long-term exit strategy looks like if negotiation continues to fail. They argue that airstrikes can impose costs on an adversary, but by themselves may not produce a durable political settlement. Adding another layer of complexity are recent intelligence reports indicating that Israel shared information with the United States regarding an alleged Iranian plot targeting President Trump, aka death threats. Iranian officials have publicly denied such allegations in the past, and the reports remain part of an evolving intelligence picture rather than a judicial finding. Nevertheless, the existence of such reports underscores how deeply personal geopolitical conflict can become once national leaders themselves are perceived as strategic targets. This is where I think we sometimes misunderstand the true cost of war. And war consumes confidence. It becomes how businesses invest. It changes how families plan for the future. It redirects scientists, engineers, and manufacturers away from building tomorrow's economy towards sustaining today's conflict. Every resource committed to one objective is a resource that cannot be committed somewhere else. When economists talk about opportunity cost, that's exactly what they're describing. What wasn't built because resources had to be used somewhere else. Sometimes the largest costs never appear on the government balance sheet. Alright, you guys, so I've been forced out of where I was. So I am officially outside. I am close by the airport, so if you hear any planes going by, that's why. And of course, if you hear a lot of chatter, it's because I'm outside. Now, just to pick up where I have left off, what I wanted to actually segue into is another topic that was heavy on my mind this week. But it's more of a thought experiment. So just suppose someone asked you to identify the most valuable resource in modern economy. 50 years ago, you might have answered oil, or a century ago, steel. Today, I'm sure the answer is very obvious, and it's what we've been referencing the last few weeks, and that is attention. If millions of people suddenly focus on one event, resources begin moving almost immediately. It changes the event itself. Imagine every person carries a tiny piece of information, which brings me to CERN. So that's CERN, okay? Whenever people hear CERN, the conversation usually goes into one or two directions. Either it's treated like it's the greatest scientific achievement of our time, or it immediately turns into a conspiracy theory. Or turns into conspiracy theories, rather. I actually think both conversations miss something important. CERN is one of humanity's largest investments in fundamental knowledge. Thousands of scientists, dozens of countries, billions of dollars, extraordinary amounts of electricity, years of collaboration, all directed toward one objective: understanding reality a little better than we did yesterday. Will every discovery immediately improve our lives? Probably not. Basic science rarely works that way, but history shows us that today's curiosity often becomes tomorrow's infrastructure. The internet, MRI machines, GPS, modern computing, none of those technologies appeared overnight. They grew out of research that at one point probably looked impractical to someone. Now, CERN is currently in the middle of one of the largest upgrades in its history. The Large Hadron Collider, has been shut down as part of the High Luminosity LHC project. This is a multi-year modernization expected to significantly increase the number of particle collisions once operations resume. Now, just to simplify it, what CERN actually is a mega magnet that moves particles at a very rapid pace. Basically, it collides particles, aka information, into each other at high speeds. Now, as I mentioned, it's currently shut down because it's going through a mega upgrade. Now, it's a massive engineering effort involving thousands of scientists and billions of dollars in investment. That made me stop and think, what motivates humanity to invest that kind of time and money and talent into asking questions that most of us will never personally answer? It's easy to look at CERN and see a particle accelerator. I see something else. I see one of the few places on Earth where dozens of nations have agreed that understanding reality itself is worth investment. And history suggests that kind of curiosity has a way of changing the world. Most people don't realize that the World Wide Web was invented at CERN in 1989. Not because scientists were trying to create the internet as we know it today, but because they needed a better way to share research and collaborate across countries. That innovation eventually escaped the laboratory and reshaped the global economy. So here's the question I have been asking myself. If one scientific breakthrough gave us the World Wide Web, what discoveries being developed today might quietly reshape the next generation? Thomas Sowell once wrote, he said, "There's no solutions, there's only trade-offs." I think that sentence says a lot because every headline this week involved a trade-off. Security or liberty, growth or inflation, speed or certainty, privacy or inconvenience, innovation or regulation, truth or popularity. One moment. Sorry. I told you guys I was outside, right? Now, none of these choices are free. Every decision costs something, which brings us back to energy. Maybe that's what energy really is, the price civilization pays to move from one state to another. So I'll leave you guys with another joke this week. You know, I like my jokes. So hopefully you find this one funny. Okay, so here we go. It's more in line of a dad joke, but okay. So why did the economist cross the road? To calculate the opportunity cost. Turns out the chicken made the sacrifice. Don't laugh. I'm sorry, you guys. I told you I was outside, so when I said the joke, someone else laughed. So it made me laugh even harder. Alright, so that's it for this evening. You know, as always, I'm wanting to make it a point to, just give valuable information. And, again, I hope you guys understood where I was going with this episode, and hopefully it helps you move forward. I look forward to next week. I just, always want to apologize if I am late because, as I stated, I'm still trying to figure this out. So next week, I do plan on having a better schedule, so things should go a lot smoother for me going forward. As always, I thank you guys. I thank you for your time, your patience, your understanding. And I hope you enjoy this upcoming week. Drink lots of water during the summer heat. And thank you for listening in to Let's Talk on Tuesday. Again, I'm your host, Matara. And you guys have a great evening.
Congratulations! You've just discovered one of the best Vegas travel promotions available today. Imagine spending days and 3 nights in Las Vegas! Relaxing in beautiful hotel accommodations, enjoying incredible restaurants, taking in unforgettable attractions, and creating memories you'll never forget. This exclusive online promotion also includes dining credits, complimentary lunch for 2, attraction tickets, and more. The best part? You can travel anytime within the next 3 years. Ready to see what's included? Click the link now and discover why Las Vegas is so much more than the Strip.